In the previous lessons, I introduced some of the built-in or fundamental types, such as int, float, double, and so forth. Now the goal was not to cover all of the types all at once, but instead to introduce the types that we needed to understand for those particular lessons. And so in this lesson, I'll introduce the bool type, because we can use boolean true or false values in selection statements. So if something is true, then do this. If it is not true, then do something else, right? The bool type is an integral type that can have one of two values, true or false. You can also initialize a boolean variable by using integrals such as 1 or 0. And with that, it's important to note that any non-zero integer or float will be treated as true and 0 as false. So in other words, if you initialize the boolean variable to 1, it will be set to true, or any other non-zero integer or float. And in the case where we initialize it to 0, it will be initialized to false. But we typically use the keywords true or false to initialize our boolean variables. The type specifier is bool and the size is 1 byte. A quick example in Visual Studio: in the main function I have this myBool variable, which is of type bool, and I initialize that to true using the keyword true right here, and then I can do a console output statement. So I do cout myBool, and let's build and run this to see what we get. It prints out 1, which means true. I initialize my bool to false, and if I build and run now, we should get 0 printed out. And that is what we get. We can also use 0 or 1 to initialize my bool. So if I want to initialize it to false, then I set it to 0. And we will get 0 then, false printed out. And I can use something like 1 to set it to true. Build and run again. And we get 1, so that is true now. That's a basic introduction to the bool type. Booleans are very handy for selection statements, which we'll talk about in upcoming lectures. But before we move on to the next video, I want to show you a quick tip, because now we are getting 1s and 0s printed out. But what if we want to actually display true or false? A quick bonus section for you: the bool alpha and no bool alpha stream manipulators allow us to set a flag that is on the console input or console output streams. Bool alpha and no bool alpha are defined in the standard namespace. You can use bool alpha to insert or extract bool values by their textual representation, so in other words true or false, instead of the integral values 1 and 0. So you basically set an alpha numerical flag to true, then you can use no bool alpha to turn that flag off again, and in that way you set it back to the default of inserting or extracting bool values as integrals again. You can see a quick example here. I have a boolean variable myBool which I initialize to true, then I do cout the stream insertion operator, and I do the bool alpha. This is basically a function, but we do not use the parentheses, and it is defined in the standard namespace. I'm just demonstrating that by qualifying bool alpha to the standard namespace using std and the scope resolution operator. If you do using namespace std at the top of your file, then you don't have to do it in this way. I'm going to do cout the stream insertion operator and the bool alpha. Then if I do cout the stream insertion operator myBool, I will get true instead of 1 in the console. Then I can basically turn that flag off again, so I do cout no bool alpha, then I can do cout myBool again, and then I'll get 1. Of course, in the case where myBool is initialized to false, this code will print out false and 0. Back in Visual Studio, I still have this example here. Now before we move on, I'd like to show you a quick trick here. I'll use list initialization to initialize this bool. Now of course this will set it to 0, and that will be false. If I build and run this, we should get false printed out. Prints out 0, so that is false. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. But I prefer this method of initialization with the bool because it's easy to read. Of course you can also do it in this way, that is also very easy to read. So build and run, and you can see that will work fine, prints out 0. In the next statement I'll print out that value as an integral, so 0 or 1 depending on what we have it set here, and then I'll set the bool alpha flag like this: console output, stream insertion operator, and the bool alpha keyword. Next I'll print my bool out again. I'll have these statements close together like this. Here I do bool alpha, this is the stream manipulator, and then this statement right here should now print out false to the console. Then I go and do no bool alpha, then I do console output myBool again, then it should print out 0 again. So we will get 0, false, and 0. Build and run, and that is what we get: 0, false, and 0. If we initialize my bool to true, build around that, of course we will get 1, true and 1. Now what about input if we want to input true or false from the keyboard? So what I'll do is, okay, I do console output, enter a boolean value true or false, and I do the cin, my bool. Notice that I capitalize B here for boolean. Boolean is capitalized in the English language because it is named after its inventor, George Boole. Okay, if I build around this, let's just see what we get. I'll enter some values such as true, and you will see we get false, false and 0. Let's try that again, Ctrl F5 to build a run, and I'll enter 1. We know that 1 is true. Press enter, now we will get true, right? So what's the problem here? Well, we have to set that bool alpha, on the cin stream as well. Again, this is in the standard namespace, so if I comment out using namespace standard, you will see red squigglies over there. The same thing with cin, cout, and inline as well. Okay, so now we have set this bool alpha on cin as well. This means that we can enter a string true or false, build around that. So this is going to be lowercase false. That seems to work fine. True, and we get true, true and 1. Okay, because remember here with the console output statement we set a no bool alpha again. The problem is that if I enter 1 now, we will actually get false. So just remember that instead of 2 we will get false. That again is because we have this bool alpha set with the console input statement with the cin stream. So this is not something I'm going to use in the rest of the course, it's just a quick demonstration, a bonus section for you. It's handy for debugging to see true or false values instead of 1s and 0s in the console output. Before I end this video off, I want to talk about Boolean naming conventions. It's important to choose meaningful Boolean variable names, such as is alive, is logged in, has access, for example. Now what you can also do is, and what I prefer to do is you can prefix Boolean variables with the lowercase b character. For example, b has flag, right, lets you have some capture the flag game, and if you as the player character has that flag or some token, then you set that b has flag Boolean variable to true. The important thing is that it should be easy for the reader to identify the variable as a type of bool. And with that we are going to wrap up this lecture on the bool type. The bool again is an integral type that can have one of two values, true or false. It is used often in programming where we need values like true or false, yes, no, or on, off. As I mentioned, any non-zero integral or floating point will be treated as true and 0 will be treated as false. Finally, as discussed in the previous slide, it's important to use variable names that makes it easy for the reader to distinguish booleans from other variables, or in other words variables of other types. Alright, that is going to wrap up this lecture on the bool type. We'll use booleans quite a bit throughout the rest of the lesson.